Europe and Ukraine are already saying no to the current plan that Vladimir Putin has put forward, in which I have no idea how a plan that Putin put forward was something that Trump was going to be pushing onto Ukraine. But right now, a lot happened within the past 24 hours, and I figured, let's sit down and talk about it, because this went from 0 to 100 within 2 hours. Everything that you've seen in the past 24 hours started a couple days ago when Steve Witkoff, who's the envoy to peace negotiations from the United States to Russia, went to Russia to meet with Vladimir Putin. This was his 4th time meeting with Putin, and realistically speaking, in the other times that he has gone, nothing was ever made of those conversations, except for the fact that we learned that Witkoff is using a Russian translator provided by Russia, which is a big no-no, which could create some issues. And that when he goes, their economic minister takes him around and showcases things that he can invest into and make money in Russia. That's what Russia's looking for, the end of this war, so they could start making money and trying to build back their economy. Well, during his I think it was about 2.5-hour conversation with Putin, Putin passed a plan to him. Now, before we talk about the plan, remember that Donald Trump himself had a deadline of last night, which is the 8th at midnight, that if Putin doesn't put forward an actual truce or ceasefire or some kind of plan, there would be some kind of consequence, in which I will tell you, it's the 9th, there has been no consequences, and no real peace plan has been brought forward. And so Witkoff went back to Trump with what Putin said. Trump went on Truth Social to say, really, there was nothing that came out of that conversation, nothing really different than what we've seen before. Putin wants X, Y, and Z. Donald Trump then jumped on the call with European leaders and with Zelenskyy to kind of talk about what it was. And then as we're getting closer and closer to Friday, now we're on Thursday, out of nowhere, things started coming out that it looks like Putin and Trump is going to meet. Now, looking on how things have been for the past 6 months, in my head, I hear Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who has said multiple times when he's asked about a meeting between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, that the only way that these two world leaders will ever meet is if Putin actually shows that he wants to end this war, and that steps are actually moving in the right direction, because Vladimir Putin is the kind of guy who kind of demands to be put on the same pedestal as other world leaders, even though for the past 3.5 years, he's been murdering people. He's been sending drones and missiles and bombs into civilian buildings. Nothing military. He's only doing it because he woke up that day and decided to do that. That's what we call a murderous dictator. And in doing so, he wants to be on the same level as Trump. So a face-to-face, a handshake, and a smile photo opportunity would boost up Putin and tell the rest of the people in Russia, see, we're not that bad. Look, the president of the United States, he wants to meet with us. It's a big image thing, something that Joe Biden didn't want to do because, once again, it makes Putin look good. And I'm pretty sure that Donald Trump was told this, and that's why they had been putting this off for so long. I think Trump says, look, we've tried all these other things with Putin. Nothing has worked. Maybe a face-to-face. And so that's where those kind of rumors started coming from, that they're going to meet. The Kremlin was the one who actually put it out first. Then they started teasing where it could be. Supposedly it was going to be in Italy, and then a couple other areas. And then out of nowhere, everything slammed together into what happened yesterday. And that was around 4 p.m. Eastern time. It was announced that, yes, it's confirmed that Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump will be meeting here in the United States, but it's going to be in Alaska. There's definitely a lot of issues with that, because when that announcement came out, Russians who believe that Alaska is still Russian and they think it should be part of Russian were happy. Like, well, maybe we can work with Trump and maybe get Alaska. That's a whole nother weird topic we don't need to get into, but picking Alaska was definitely interesting for a few different reasons. One, it is the one state closest to Russia. So if Putin does fly, across Russia, which I don't really think he is, he's probably going to fly over the Arctic. To get there, it's the closest one. But the other thing is that there aren't that many people in Alaska. And I say this because here in the United States, we're very big on protests. Okay? We're very big on protests. We'll protest anything. And I think Trump realizes that if Putin came to, whether it be Washington, D.C. or a different state, hundreds of thousands of us would show up with Ukrainian flags and be on the tarmac, on the roads, outside the buildings, and Putin would see this. And so he picked a spot which is kind of far away, in which he doesn't think that people are going to fly to or go to and do some kind of protest. Now remember, Vladimir Putin hasn't seen protest. He hasn't been to a country in which, that hates him. Let's be honest. As Americans, we hate him for what he's done to Ukraine and other countries. And so in this mindset, it's like he's never seen a protest. So let's pick a place far away to where he doesn't feel that, which I totally disagree. And if you're watching from the United States and you're from Alaska, go on Amazon, buy a Ukrainian flag, and go outside. I'll be flying out west. I'm not going to Alaska, though. I'll be in Seattle. That aside, we've now gotten to the point to where that came out. And then when Trump was asked about, peace plans, what we're talking about here, he started mentioning something about swapping territories. Now, this is where things get a little weird, because this was something that no one in Europe or Ukraine was like, wait a minute, what? You guys are going to be talking about swapping land? And then we started getting little blips of information coming out, some from the Wall Street Journal, some from the New York Times, on what the proposal Putin told Witkoff during that meeting, in which I know there's another article on the German website Bild that talks about maybe some kind of miscommunication. There's been no verification on that, or really on anything for this matter. Everything's just like, a source here, a source there, and right now things are just really unreliable. But what we are understanding from multiple sources, unnamed multiple sources, that this plan that Putin gave to Witkoff would see Kyiv remove its troops from two very important areas that are partially occupied in Ukraine. That's Luhansk and Donetsk. And then from there would be the front line frozen through Zaporizhzhia and Kherson. And then I guess Russia would deoccupy areas near Sumy and Kharkiv. Now, would you consider that a land swap? I wouldn't. That plan, at the face of it, doesn't make any sense. First of all, remember that Russia is the aggressor here. So why are we rewarding Russia by giving them land when they invaded? Okay? Now, Putin's plan also talks about, hey, we'll do that, and then we could talk about ceasefires, which has not really been any kind of people's plan. It's like, wait a minute, what? That's, how do we get there? And so before this even got out in the public, everyone already knew Ukraine was going to reject this. Now, by the time that this information came out, just so everyone knows, because there's a lot of time differences here. When the announcement about the meeting came out, it was around 4 U.S. Eastern time. By the time the information came out about the land swap, it was probably around 6. Now, by that point, time difference, there's a 7-hour time difference. Okay? So in Ukraine, Zelenskyy and his team, everyone's already, off for the night. And we're all freaking out here in the United States. And so Zelenskyy, I would say probably within the first hour and a half of him being awake, already had a video online, essentially coming forward and completely rejecting any kind of land swap. Let's remember something very important here. Ukraine has a constitution which does not allow what Trump is pushing and what Putin put forward. It is one of those weird things that it's like, how did we even get to this point? And so Zelenskyy recorded his video and he put it online for all of us to read. And so I'm going to read it all in full for you, and then we're going to discuss it, because this was his first reaction. And from what I'm being told from my friends, he did find out about it last night. They wrote all of this. But in order to even try to even swap land or do whatever Trump wants, that Putin wants, constitutions would have to be changed. Hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians would have to be relocated. There's so many questions in which, okay, well, can Ukraine join NATO? Can they keep Western weapons? Can they still build their military? What's happening to those children that you stole? All 30,000 of them. We're going to get all of them back. There's so many questions. Because Putin, he doesn't want to do a ceasefire first. He wants to get the land and then start talking, which is, once again, against a lot of things. But we're now getting to Zelenskyy. He says Ukrainians defend what's theirs. Even those who are with Russia know that Russia is doing evil. Of course, we will not reward Russia for what it has perpetrated. The Ukrainian people deserve peace, but all partners must understand what a dignified peace is. This war must be brought to an end, and Russia must end it. Russia started it and is dragging it out, ignoring all deadlines, and that is the problem, not something else. Because I'm trying to illustrate here that this is not Ukraine's fault. This is Russia just being Russia and not really truly trying to have an end. They always try to find the deadline and figure out a way to extend it just a little bit further so that, they can keep going after civilians. He says the answer to the Ukrainian territorial question already is in the Constitution of Ukraine. No one will deviate from this. No one will be able to. Ukrainians will not gift their land to the occupier. Now, he does continue going out here saying that Ukraine is ready for real decisions that can bring peace. Any decisions that are against us, any decisions are without Ukraine, at the same time are decisions against peace. He does go on here, but this came out. So we're like less than 24 hours since the announcement came out that Trump's going to have this big meeting and they're going to talk about swapping land in Alaska. To Zelenskyy putting the brakes down and saying, wait a minute, you're going to bring us to the table maybe? Because at this moment, it seems like Donald Trump is meeting with Putin in Alaska to talk about the future of Ukraine without Ukraine. And if you remember, Zelenskyy from day one, since actually I would say it's been at least 3-4 months, have been saying, Putin, let's meet face to face. And Trump, even like a couple weeks ago, said, hey, let's have a meeting and then let's have a meeting with Zelenskyy. And right now, Putin doesn't want that meeting with Zelenskyy, like we had mentioned before. Putin doesn't want to be on the same level with, or even the same room with Zelenskyy, because Zelenskyy is a very loved world leader and Putin is not. So now we started seeing Zelenskyy making phone calls with a lot of European leaders. We're talking about Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister from the UK, the President of France, Emmanuel Macron. Because as all this is going on, J.D. Vance, the U.S. Vice President, is in the UK. And they start getting together with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Keith Kellogg, the U.S. envoy to peace negotiations for Ukraine. Then we have Keir Starmer, and then we have David Lammy, the foreign minister, all getting together because the United States now needs to talk to the European leaders in Ukraine saying, hey, so we have Putin coming. Let's all get on the same page here. In which then we saw European leaders and Ukraine on Zelenskyy go, we're not giving up the land. We thought maybe we made this clear here. That what you are suggesting, freezing the land, giving this, is the same thing that Putin has been saying from day one. And yet you were supposed to give him pressure on Friday. And instead you just said, yeah, this is a great idea. Even though this is not anything different than what has already been established that Putin has wanted from day one. And so now we're getting to the point to where Ukraine and Europe has completely rejected Putin's idea. Remember that Ukraine and Europe in general, they have an organization called the Coalition of the Willing, in which I think it's 30-something odd countries that came together that are standing with Ukraine so that they could put together this massive outline and framework of how we can actually have peace. And in every single one of those countries, the first step is, before we do anything, we stop the killings. It's a ceasefire. You want peace? You stop the killings. Because remember, if Ukraine stops fighting today, Ukraine falls. If Russia stops fighting, the war's over. And at this very moment, Putin doesn't want to stop the war. And I know people are going to say in the comments section, well, let's try giving the land to Russia. We'll see what happens. We tried that under Obama with Crimea. It doesn't work. And so you've got the Coalition of the Willing, European leaders, and Zelenskyy all saying, JD Vance, we want this war to end. But why would we remove all of our troops without a ceasefire? I mean, honestly, that is the most simple-minded thing you could think of. Yeah, I'm not going to remove my guys until you remove your guys. Or a ceasefire, in which Russia has violated every single ceasefire after that. Let's have a ceasefire right now. Let's let it go for 30, 40 days. And if Russia upholds that, then we could start discussions. That's the plan. That's what the Ukrainian coalition of the willing's plan always was. We're going to sit down. We're going to talk. We're going to make sure that everyone follows everything. And then we have steps. Then we could talk about who's going to get what. We could then talk about who's repaying what. When are the children coming home? Because remember, in the 3 or 4 now talks the Ukrainian officials had with Russian officials, things went nowhere because Russia doesn't want things to go anywhere. And so that's where we're at this very moment. We have Putin meeting with Donald Trump next Friday in Alaska, where I'm sure by the time that comes, they're not even going to be talking about swapping lands. It should just be a total ceasefire. That should be the only thing. What's going to happen moving forward, it's up in the air. Because, like, we've got Zelenskyy, who just posted online. I'm recording this video. It's 4 p.m. Just posted 30 minutes ago. And I'm going to read it for you. Okay? I have not heard any partners express doubts about America's ability to ensure that the war ends. The President of the United States has the levers and the determination. Ukraine has supported all of President Trump's proposals starting back to February. Ceasefire, all formats have been supported. What is needed now is not a pause in the killing, but a real, lasting peace. Not a ceasefire sometime in the future, in months, but immediately. President Trump told me so, and I fully support it. He does continue more. This is a pretty long speech here. Next part is, there must be a just end to the war, and it is Russia that must end the war. It started. Ukraine and all partners share the same understanding of what is needed for a ceasefire, for an end to the killings. There's only one actor opposing this, Putin. His only card is the ability to kill, and he's trying to sell the cessation of killings at the highest possible price. It is important that this does not mislead anyone. Results are needed at the leader's level. Dignified results that will save lives, that the world will value, and for which it will be grateful to the leader who delivers them. Everyone clearly sees Putin's tactics. He fears sanctions and is doing everything to bail on them. He wants to exchange a pause in the war, in the killings, for the illegalization of the occupation of our land. He wants to get territorial spoils for the second time. Putin was allowed to take Crimea, and this led to the occupation of Donetsk and Luhansk regions. He received no preemptive punishment when he assumed this on his borders. This led to the full-scale war and the occupation of even more parts of Ukraine. Now Putin wants to be forgiving for seizing the south of our Kherson region, Zaporizhzhia, the entire territory of Luhansk, Donetsk regions, and Crimea. We will not allow this second attempt to partake in Ukraine. Knowing Russia, where there is a second, there'll be a third. This is why we stand firm on clear Ukrainian positions. We must end the war with a dignified peace, based on a clear and reliable security architecture. Our partners are ready to help us with this. We just had a report from our team in the UK. There were talks amongst the security representatives of the US and Europe, Ukraine, the US, Vice President JD Vance, the UK, France, Germany, Italy, Finland, and Poland, and the meeting was constructive. The path to peace for Ukraine must be determined together. With Ukraine, this is fundamental. It is important that joint approaches and a shared vision work toward genuine peace, a consolidation position, ceasefire, end of occupation, and then the end of war. And that's where we're at. I know, it's a lot. And I said this on one of my TikTok videos earlier, and I want your input. from day one, any conversation that involves Ukraine needs to be there for. Putin doesn't want a meeting with Zelenskyy, but he needs to meet with Zelenskyy to end this war. And so my suggestion, this is not news, this is just my opinion, is that come next Friday, let's have Putin come in and sit down, Donald Trump come in and sit down. They shake hands, they start talking, the door opens up wide, and here comes Zelenskyy. That's a power play. And if Trump does this without Putin finding out, Trump will look good, Zelenskyy will look good, and of course Putin will have to negotiate and meet with Zelenskyy one-on-one. That's where I'm at. And I want to know your thoughts about this in the comment section below. I want to thank you guys for joining me, and a special thank you out to my paid subscribers for my newsletter. There's a free one and a paid one. The paid one, you get your name at the end of my videos. So for those who are doing it, I greatly appreciate it as you're supporting me doing my journalism. And I want to thank you guys for joining me. If you haven't done so yet, please do subscribe, turn on notifications, and give this video a thumbs up. I'm Joey. Stay safe.